Alright, in this section we're going to actually kind of get into some of our first scans and kind of see what's on the network and actually get into some of the Metasploit stuff that we've all probably been waiting for at this point. The last time I'm going to mention it, make sure please that your network is configured properly. If you've got the host-only adapter, at least your machines are on the same network, that way they can talk to each other. Otherwise, we're going to be doing all of these scans and we're not going to be able to get very far. So basically we're in the MSF console. If you've been following along, that's where we left off before. And if I just do a question mark, we get a bunch of stuff. I could scroll up here and show you these other ones, which we'll go over those a little bit later. What I'm mainly concerned about right now is the database backend commands. And the first thing that we're going to do is a DB status. DB underscore status. And this basically comes back and says PostgreSQL is connected to MSF3. If you're in Kali Linux and you followed along so far, you should get the same results. If you remember, before we started MSF console, we started up Metasploit services, which started up the PostgreSQL service, which is why it's connected, and it's also connected to MSF3. MSF3 is the name of the Metasploit database that's already pre-configured inside Kali. So if you're using a different distro of Linux or you're using some other operating system with Metasploit on it, you may have to install, configure your own database. You may name it something else. But since we're doing this in Kali, it makes it a lot easier, saves time, and we don't have to do all that sort of thing. So this is good. The reason that it's connecting to a database is because it's going to start storing some of this information. So when we start doing our scans and we start gathering some of this recon, it's actually plugging that into this database that it's connected to. And that will help us determine, keep track of targets and try to find the vulnerabilities and what exploits we should use, that sort of thing. So that's why it's connected to a database. The next thing that we're going to look at is the hosts command. Hosts are basically potential targets. And this one says, address, MAC. It kind of gives us these different sections, but there's nothing here. And there's nothing here because we haven't done any scans. There's nothing there to find. So we basically want to start plugging data in here so we can kind of get started. So the next thing is going to be our NMAP. NMAP, if you don't know what that is, it's extremely popular. It's a network discovery tool. It's a port scanner. We can detect all kinds of things on it. Firewalled systems, if something's using a firewall, if it's not, we can try and detect what services are being ran, version numbers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. They've really gotten it's really evolved, and it's still being developed. It's an open community of developers, and I guess it's just kind of like a community project. The people volunteer to work on the NMAP project, and so anyways, but it's built into Metasploit, and Metasploit has some other modules that we can run. That will do some port scanning and that sort of thing, but we're going to go ahead and start with just the NMAP. Now, we can run NMAP just by itself without the DB underscore, but that's not going to really help us because it's not going to plug it into the database. So by using the DB underscore NMAP, that will actually plug it into our database. Now, how do we know what to scan? Well, we know that we're on the 192.168.1 network, and then here's our particular IP, which is going to be the 101. Technically this whole thing is our IP, but we're going to basically scan from 0 to 255, so to speak, which is the max that we can scan, or 254 if you don't want to count the 255. But anyway, so I know that my XP machine is 1.100 because I set the static IP. But if we were just coming into the network, we don't necessarily know that. So I'm going to pretend like I don't know that. Either way, we'll be able to find it. It's just we'll try to treat it as real as we can anyways. So let's start off by doing a db_nmap, and then we're going to plug in the IP 192.168.1.0, and we're going to use something called a CIDR block. We can do a -16 or we can do a -24, and we're going to use the -24, and that's going to scan just this subnet. It's going to scan from the range of 0 all the way to 255. And there's one more. I mean, there's all kinds of other commands that we can add in here, but I'm going to do a -VV. That's not a W, that's a -VV, and that increases our verbosity level so that I can see what it's doing. If we don't put this, it's optional. You don't have to. If we don't put it, then it might look like it's stuck, or that maybe it froze. But when we, because it can take a while to do some of these scans. But I'm just going to go ahead and do that and hit enter, and it actually tells us what it's doing. So if we didn't put this -VV, it actually wouldn't even. It would just show us the starting NMAP. It probably wouldn't show us any of this other information. So we're going to wait and see what that does. And since that's doing that, I'm going to jump over to my XP machine, and just to show you guys, control panel, Windows firewall, and my firewall is on. So I just wanted to show you that. There's a lot of people that are on YouTube and stuff, and they turn the firewall off. And you know, I don't know. I'm XP is great to learn on, like I've talked about before, but try to keep the firewall on. It's very easy if the firewall is turned off, but we want to keep it on. And by default, it's turned on anyways when you do the install. So unless the user actually turns it off, the firewall should be on. So we're gonna keep it on. And let me jump back to the Kali machine, and it's done. So not bad. And we can see that all of the different hosts that it checked. Again, if we didn't use that -VV, it wouldn't show us any of that information. But we can see right here that it found 192.168.1.100, and then it goes on to tell us the ports. We've got a couple open ports, a couple of closed ports. It even gives us a MAC address, which it can help us, but we're running inside a virtual machine, so it actually says VMware. And then it actually tells us that we scanned ourselves, because we are .101. And there's actually a command in there where I can exclude an IP address. So if I know that I'm 101, I can tell it to actually not scan me, or I can say only scan this, don't scan these ranges. I mean, there's really, we can do almost anything we want with NMAP as far as what we're trying to do and what we're not trying to do. Oh, anyways, hosts, that's what we're going to use now. And we can see that it has plugged in the information, which is perfect. But we don't really know anything else about it. So we've got the 192.168.1.100, we've got a MAC address, but what is it? You know, is it a router? Is it a printer? Is it an actual machine? Is it Windows? Is it Linux? What is it? So the next command that I'm going to show you is going to be another db_nmap 192.168.1.100, because we know what it is now, or at least we're going to try. Actually, let me go back here, and I'm going to do a -A and -VV. So we're just taking little baby steps, but each time we do this, we're gathering more and more and more information. So the -A, make sure it's a capital A, it's actually going to, let me go ahead and start this because it's going to take a little bit for it to do this. What NMAP can do is it's going to try and detect the operating system. Now, it doesn't just magically know, you know, it can't just say, hey, what is your operating system? And it doesn't just tell us what it is. You know, the computer doesn't respond and just say, hey, I'm Windows XP. So what it does is, based on the ports that are open, it it probes those ports a little bit more, and it's trying to detect, based on the feedback that it gets, what service is running, and then what the signatures look like. And so if you're running Linux, it's going to be a certain signature. If you're running Windows, it's going to be a certain signature, and then of course different version numbers and so on and so on. And of course Windows XP will use this signature if it's Windows 7, and so forth. Really, really cool stuff as far as how it actually works. Let's see, it's about, there we go. So I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to kind of just try to go through this real quick. We can kind of see the same thing. It tells us the same IP address, open ports, and let's go down a little bit more. All right, so it actually wasn't able to see much yet with this. We'll see a little bit more when we go down there. But it actually, for this service, it detects what it is, and it tries to, based on the signatures, it actually comes back with Microsoft Windows XP, which is pretty cool. Again here, Microsoft Windows XP, and then it has a pipe, and it says 2003. But we'll see what it comes up with. TCP/IP fingerprint. We could actually copy this. There will be occasions where NMAP will tell you that it doesn't know what it is, and so some of these, it may give you some of these weird looking series of characters, and you can actually copy it. You can save your NMAP report, and you can actually send it to the people at NMAP, and that actually helps them in their project and trying to determine what is what. And so it's a community project, so everything that we put into it, hopefully we get out of it, and it helps everybody out. Let me see here, and this is interesting. So the net BIOS, it actually says XP VM1, and here it is again, XP VM1, and it actually says workgroup. And that's pretty interesting, because my XP VM1, I'm logged in as XP VM1. If I go to Control Panel, I go to User Accounts, we can see again XP VM1. And I believe the workgroup is workgroup by default. I never changed it, so it's pretty interesting that it's able to detect this information, yet the firewall is on, but it's still able to somehow pull this information. Pretty awesome. Here we go again. NetBIOS, the computer name, XP VM1. Workgroup is workgroup. Awesome. So now we're going to do a hosts, and we can actually see that it is now Windows XP. We're not quite done gathering our recon, but this is we're just taking those little baby steps to get where we want to, and we're going to go ahead and go over some more in the next section. But hopefully you've gotten this far. If you had any issues, again, please send me an email, and rewind, take notes, do everything that you can to do this as best as you can anyways. But anyways, I will see you guys in the next section.